Restore us again and cause your face to shine. Turn to us, oh yeah, and we shall be saved. We shall be saved. You had planted, the vine you caused to grow, how you uprooted the nations to make a place of its own. But now the hedges are broken, cut down and burned in the fire. Look down from heaven, come and visit your vine. Restore us again, cause your face to shine. Turn to us, oh yeah, we shall be saved, and we will be saved again.
Shalom, shalom. Welcome to the broadcast. Yeah, I know it's been a while, guys. Give me just a moment. You know something I just realized? That's the problem with not having two monitors. I didn't realize you guys weren't, you were just seeing black there, right? Yeah, it's been too long. How you guys doing? Are you able to see me now? Oi. All right, so I'm having to use my iPad to see your chat. You can see me. Good to go. How's everyone doing? Welcome to the broadcast. So we're going to be picking up where I left off, basically with reconciling the calendar. If you caught that video, you know what I'm talking about. We're upon the time where it's critical, if we're going to get the whole year right, in reconciling the beginning of the year. On the Jewish calendar, it would be known as the 7th month. But on Yahweh's calendar, it is the 1st of the year. You understand? Give me a thumbs up if you understand that. It all changed around money. When things changed, I'm going to show you an incredible pyramid scheme that's been going on since 1776 in this country. 13 steps of time. You got to hang in there, though. We'll go over that in just a little while. It all leads to the third temple, guys, and it seems like it fits into a very peculiar pattern. It started in 1776 with the coinage. So we're going to get into that as well. Talking about Shemitahs and Shemitah cycles, the agricultural rhythm that we should be in. But we got off of it. It was around coinage. You know, the people needed coins so that they could be taxed. Right? You needed dollar bills. You needed coins so that the government could tax you. I learned something really interesting here recently, and I don't think it was by accident, here on the island in Hawaii, that under Kamehameha III, there was a way of life that was very similar to biblical agricultural lunar observance. These cycles, right? And the way I was told is there was no coins, right? So how did people trade? How did people buy things? Right? It was a different system. We're talking about an agricultural society where you may have people that live up in the mountains that grow a certain crop that doesn't grow down by the sea, and they also don't have access to fish. But you got fishermen who live near the sea and have access to that, but don't have access to or can grow what only grows in the climates higher up. And so the people would trade. Imagine that. Such a novel idea. You specialize in growing a couple of different things, and you do get really well at it. You bring in a harvest, and when you need fish or you need venison or beef or something, you trade, because the person who has those items is also looking for what you have, right? But how would you tax that? Say if you're a monarch, how would you get your bling bling if the people didn't have something you could take, right? You could take some pineapples or, a crop of sugar or coffee, but it might spoil. It doesn't last long, right? You have to use it. Has a shelf life, right? Yahweh told the people, don't store up the manna when I give it to you. It's got a shelf life. You only need what you need for the day. Again, a novel idea. So that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. We're going to talk about the Jewish calendar and what those that are following Hillel, and that would be any Hasidic Jews, Messianics, are also following this calendar. And if you recall the last broadcast I did, or video I did, we talked about that very thing, reconciling the calendar. I had been emailed many times on how to do this. Those of you knew, Darla and I live on a lunar calendar and have for several years, and it works. We've never been late for a Moedim or Moed, right? These are appointed times. You don't want to miss these appointments. It's important not to miss appointments, you understand? So I'm going to show you how not to miss the appointment, how you can make every one. And it's based on observance of the moon, guys, and that's what it comes down to. The rhythm of the world and all of nature, the crops that grow, the fruit trees and things that bloom, is on a cycle. You understand? You with me? The sun also plays a role in this. For instance, you heard the term Abib. There are some that believe that you can't have Abib if it's too cold. Right? It's a misconception. I'm going to clear that up for you. And then we're going to go over some data. Hard facts. And I'm going to show you how you can absolutely know when the first of Nisan is. Incidentally, the Jews are adding an extra month this year, which is equal to a leap year in Hebrew observance. My opinion, as well as others, hold that this is not correct. At least not this month. All right. You guys still with me? If we got any questions, darling, pass them over, because I'm not able to see the chat. We're going to be talking about cycles. You guys know what Abib is? Abib is not a month. Abib is a word. It means the ripening. We're talking about winter fruit or winter grain, barley. It's the ripening of the barley. And this comes at a certain time. And that is established by a rhythm that cannot be manipulated by man, nor should it be attempted. However, it is done so on the Gregorian and on the Hebrew calendar consistently with leap years, adding another month. And I'm going to show you how this is going to throw things off if you do that. The month of Abib is the month of Abib is the month where the equinox, where the day and the night are equal in length. It falls on the day on or before the first of the month, which occurs around March 19th, 20, or the 21st. Every year around this time is this equinox. The commandment to keep the feast at the appointed time in the month of Abib, Nisan, Exodus 23:15, means that the calendar must keep Abib as close as possible to the spring vernal equinox. And then the moed of Passover can happen. So this sets in motion and in time for the observance of every other feast throughout the year at this point. This is why it's critical to get it right. Because if you don't, let's say you're observing Purim at the time that you're supposed to be observing Passover. Can you see where that would be a problem? The calendar must keep Abib as close as possible to the spring. Today we call it vernal equinox. And the moed of Passover can happen. Thus, the month of Abib is the month when Passover falls on the vernal equinox. And it just so happens that this year it does so. If you're following the lunar calendar, then you already know that around March 20th is indeed Passover. The 20th. And it falls on the equinox. So if you are pushing it back another month with Adar 2, and then another 15 days, you're way off. You see, it has nothing to do with cold weather, whether the grain is Abib. It has to do with the length of the day. Sunlight. Sunlight is the giver of life for plants, right? So it doesn't matter if there's snow on the ground. Barley grows in the snow. Bet you didn't know that. It's a winter grain. They grew a lot of barley in central Utah. I remember. Actually, they plant it with another crop. It's like a dual harvest. And it's because the barley lays kind of dormant under the snow, and then when it has a peak of sunlight, it takes off. Exodus 12:2. This month shall be the beginning of months to you. It is to be the first month of the year to you, not the seventh month. Exodus 13:3-4. Moses said unto the people, remember, solemnly observe and commemorate this day which you came out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage and slavery, by the strong and powerful hand of Yahweh, brought you out of this place, and nothing leavened shall be eaten. On this day in the month of Abib, you're to go about onward. Exodus 13:7-10. Unleavened bread shall be eaten throughout the 7 days. No leavened bread shall be seen with you, nor shall the leaven be within the borders of your territory. You shall explain this to your son on that day. It is because Yahweh did for me when I came out of Egypt. This is a way of remembering. You follow? This is why it was always done every year, around 1,500 times by the time Yeshua came on the scene. So it was well known. But it was for all generations, so that we would never forget what it was for. It shall serve as a sign to you. Excuse me, let me back up. It is because what Yahweh did for me when I came out of Egypt. It shall serve as a sign to you on your hand, and as a reminder on your forehead, so that the instruction of Yahweh may be in your mouth. And for the strong and powerful hand of Yahweh brought us out of Egypt. Therefore you shall keep this ordinance at this time from year to year. Numbers 2-3. The sons of Israel are to keep the Passover at its appointed time. On the 14th day of this month at twilight, You shall keep it at its appointed time. According to its statutes and ordinance, you shall keep it. Okay? So the spring equinox currently occurs each year around March 19th, 20th, or the 21st. You understand? Let me do a screenshot so you could see. You guys able to see this? I want to take you to the Jewish calendar and show you what they've actually done to this. Is, by the way, this is how they reconcile the jacked up days of the year. Okay? There's no other way of putting it. That's what it's for, is to reconcile what's already been jacked up. Okay, so currently it is February 16th on the Gregorian, but it's the 11th of Adar, Adar 1 on the Hebrew calendar. Now, March, around here, the 13th of Adar, the Adar 2 that they've added in Adar, when it's actually Nisan, it's not Adar. This is the time when we're talking about. And I'm showing you this on the Hebrew calendar. This is not the lunar calendar. Do not be confused. I'm showing you the extent of the confusion. Okay? So at that time, they're going to be celebrating Purim and not Passover. Passover for them is not going to be until another month. You see this? So this is Nisan. And so what happens to the equinox? What do we do with the equinox in the Adar 2 calendar, guys? Does anyone have an answer? It's not considered at all. It's not considered at all. Philo, a Hellenistic Jewish philosopher who lived before, during, and after our Savior's earthly ministry, recorded many of the details relating to the biblical calendar in the first century. In a below quotation, Philo confirms the Feast of Unleavened Bread is tied to the vernal equinox. At the Feast of Ingathering is tied to the fall equinox. And the reason for this is that it's an agricultural based economy. At this first season, the name he gives the springtime and its equinox, he ordained that what is to call the Feast of Unleavened Bread should be kept for 7 days, all of which are declared should be honored equally in the ritual assigned for them. For he ordered 10 sacrifices to be offered each day. At the new moons, whole burnt offerings amounting to 70 in part from the sin offerings. And he considered, that the 7 days of the firstborn, that the 7 days of the feast bore the same relation to the equinox, which falls in the 7th month, as the new moon does to the month. And this is in Philo's Special Laws. Here's the reference there. To the 7 he gives chief feast prolonged for many days, 2 feasts, that is of the 2 equinoxes, each lasting 7 days.
You're saying they're only seeing at 3/4 of the page.
What? 3/4 of the page. Yeah, I don't know, how do I center that? Okay, see if this does any better. What?
Still seeing about 3/4.
Well, I mean, it's centered for me. I don't know what else to do.
Hold on, something is just
It's the best I can do, guys. It's not, you know, the equipment is what it is. To 7 he gives the chief feast prolonged for many days, 2 feasts and its 2 equinox, each lasting 7 days, the first in its spring, and to celebrate the ripeness of the sown crops. The ripeness. That is what Abib means, the ripeness. It doesn't mean the final harvest. And that's exactly what you will have in April, guys. The harvest is over. There is no Abib. The Abib is long past. For it was the general festival of the Jews, and this again is Philo, at the time of the autumnal equinox, during which it is the custom of the Jews to live in their tents. And of course, this is talking about Sukkot, the 2 different observance of feasts at an equinox. You can find that in Leviticus 23, 39-42. Flavius Josephus, the 1st century Romano-Jewish scholar, sheds even more light on the issue by confirming our understanding from another angle. Josephus comments on the position of the sun in relation to the stars at the time of Passover. In the month of Xanthicus, which is called Nisan, and its beginning of the year on the 14th day of the lunar month, when the sun is in Aries. For in this month it was that were delivered from bondage under the Egyptians. The law ordained that we should every year slay that sacrifice which I before told you we killed when we came out of Egypt, and which is called the Passover. And that's Josephus. And then he gives a couple of graphics of actually where the sun is, and the ecliptic, the different points in the zodiac, where it is. Although we cannot see the same constellation today as they did in the 1st century to determine the beginning of the year, we can determine with a fair degree of certainty how the new year was reckoned in relation to the equinox. In the month of Xanthicus, well, I done read that. Josephus plainly states that the Passover was observed when the sun was in the sign of Aries. As you can see there. Can you see any? Yeah, you can see a little bit of that graphic. All right. So Wikipedia says, when we're talking about grains again, the basic meaning of the word Aviv is in the stage of growth is when the seeds have reached a full size and are filling with starch, but not yet have dried. They're not ready for harvest. It's just ripening. Ripening barley is what we're looking for. Shalom, Michael. Thank you for that, brother. And wow, look at my camera. Now that's zoomed in. How did that happen? The sons of Israel are to keep the Passover at the appointed time on the 14th day of the month at twilight. You shall keep the appointed time according to all its statutes and ordinance. You shall keep it. The spring equinox currently occurs around the same time every year, March 19th, 2021, upon the Gregorian calendar. This doesn't change. So if you add an Adar 2, you totally don't consider that at all. Do you think the barley cares? Certainly not. It's going to be ripe whether you're observing ripeness or not. So, very interesting how, this is not even considered nowadays. And it goes back to coinage. Coinage. We're no longer trading in grains unless you're buying commodities. It's not about how warm or cold it is. Okay, it's about how much light is there. Elohim said, "Let there be light bearers, the sun, moon, and stars, in the expanse of the heavens, to separate the day and the night. And let them be for useful signs, and for marking appointed days, and for years." It sets the year. And this is why it's important. Let's try this. See if we can how much of this graphic can you see? You guys able to see that? I think I got an idea of what it is. Can you see this? How about now? Just portions of it. You should be able to see a fuller, I figured out what it was. I apologize, folks, for being ignorant of my equipment. Now, one of my last videos, we talked about this graphic that Lewis put up on his site, the Shemitah pattern. You guys able to see this?
You see, Miss Jonathan, we've got through the PAT.
Okay. All right, so I need to shift it a little bit. Or maybe I need to... How about that? I'll put a link to this down in the bottom. I'm going to go over this. Okay, so this is the pyramid scheme I was telling you about. And it's tied to the temple. And I find it really interesting that at the time that we go on to coinage, this is at 1776, by the way. And guess what we needed coins for? We were at a war. We were in a war of independence. They had to fund the war effort, right? So people needed to be taxed. Based on the laws of seven, many conclude that the coming cycle will be, and this is, by the way, something he did a few years ago, so it may be talking in past tense in some instances. Many conclude that this coming cycle will be a sevenfold intensification of the judgment since 1966. In particular, since 2001 and 2008, the patterns also suggest a 3-2-1 countdown. And with that, I think what Lewis is onto is the different times, benchmarks in time prophetically that we're in. For instance, we were told there's going to be a time of sorrows, right? There's also going to be a time of the birth pangs, right? So these different points in time is an intensification, if you will, of things coming to a head. Now, in this, we were given signs, as you can see here, I'm sure very small, and these areas fitting very perfectly on the Fibonacci is the tetrads that we saw. I'll zoom in on that. Can you guys see that? in this area. We had 4 blood moons in 1950 when Israel became a nation. 1949, 1950, excuse me, after it became a nation. When Jerusalem was captured in 1966, I believe it was, another. And then in 2014, 2015. In this time, we've had 31, and starting from 1776, we have had 31 Shemitas. Excuse me. By 20, what is this? That's got to be 2012. So by 2014, 2015, we're at 33 Shemitas. (1776), and then the Hebrew year 5776
Move it up, please, for 6.
are very significant. What do you say?
Move it up, please. I'm looking at something on the bottom of the chart, they can't see it.
Yeah, I can't show the whole chart at one time. I have to blow it, reduce it all the way down to show the chart. So what you'll have to do, folks, is review this video and look at the chart that I'll provide down in the description box, so you can go and look at this. There's a lot of information on here. Down at the bottom, you can see that we have actually have 7 Shemitas since the beginning of the blood moon cycles in 66. From 66 till now, 5776 is when that ended. There were 7 Shemitah cycles. Now, Shemitahs are dealing with the land resting. This is an agricultural thing. But as you well know, we're no longer anywhere a agricultural society. I mean, we use it to survive, but it's not a commodity that's traded like it used to be, and let's say before the colonial war. Incredibly, the Coinage Act occurred in a Shemitah year and converges on 5776 that falls on September 13, 2015. This time frame concludes on a 32nd Shemitah cycle and a 13th step pyramid, 13 steps of time. All right, so the pyramid scheme I'm talking about, right, the coinage that started, we have 13 steps in the all-seeing eye pyramid on the dollar bill. So in the graphic, we're looking at 13 steps of time converging on the very year that groundbreaking occurred for the third temple. Is that a coincidence? That it's exactly 33 Shemitahs later? Excuse me, 32 Shemitahs. The 33rd Shemitah will be 2025. Some are saying this is probably the time that it's actually open. It's a guess based on mathematical probability and the convergence, as you can see here. The capstone, if you will be laid somewhere before or in 2025. Can you guys see that? I don't guess you can you? Oh my. So, I may look for some other broadcast software that is a little more user-friendly. I don't know why you couldn't see the whole graphic. I will put that down in the description for this broadcast so that you can take a look at it another day. 33 Shemitahs, and the capstone is laid. Is that a coincidence? You know, when I came across the Barak Shriner Temple, and I observed that the effigy on the side, which looked to me like it was Barack Obama dressed up as a pharaoh with a Muslim sword and crescent and all that get up. 50 years before Barack Obama came on the scene, by the way, this was, and it looks just like him. Happens to bear his name, Barack. How would the Illuminati know that? I said dark forces behind it, because we're talking about Albert Pike and some magic. Illuminati is in some magic. You know that? So from the time that they coined and became a nation that had money and coins to 5776, the groundbreaking, and what I mean by that is everything has been prepared. The coining school is in a sense, it's been ongoing, training priests, which means there have been sacrifices. I bet you didn't know that. Did you know that they're actually sacrificing animals? That's how you train. There's what are they going to do? Read some books on it? No, they are actually doing hands-on training and learning how to do kosher sacrifice. And guess what? Just a couple months ago, what did we see? The consecration of the altar. What? Why is it significant? Why does TheCodeSearcher even care? Well, if you know your Bible, this is very prophetic. This is end-time prophetic stuff. And a precursor of a couple of things that are going to go down. First, we know that there's going to be an Antichrist that is going to be revealed. But ultimately, after the war and all the chaos that ensues with Satan's wrath, our Messiah is going to touch down on the Mount of Olives, and it's going to split in two, just like it says in the Scripture. That's not a symbolism. That is not an analogy. That is literal. He will step down on that mountain. Just as he left, he will come back. Amen? So that's why it's important. Because when we're discerning the end times weather, if you will, these are the things we observe, the things that we see fulfilling the prophecies of the Bible that lets us know the time that we're in. And there's some code searchers, Chris, Scott, I happen to know that they're working really hard on some really amazing codes concerning Kushner and Trump and the Third Temple, the whole shebang. I think you'll be, maybe you won't be shocked, but I think you'll be amazed at the detail that the codes have about these forthcoming events. We're so close. There's a Zionist in the White House who is a Cyrus, who is already put money toward the temple. He's a supporter of the Temple Institute. Did you know that? Which qualifies him to be exactly like Cyrus of Isaiah 45, and in Nehemiah and Ezra, where it's recorded that Cyrus was ordered by the Most High to build this temple. And what did he do? Instead, he sent money. He didn't go and do it. He sent money to do it, because he's packing it like that, right? Got some money. You think it's a coincidence that Kushner married into Trump's family? A very orthodox and religious and very powerful religious family. Don't you know they know something about a Mashiach? Something that's been announced, or is going to be announced here in a few days, right? They're celebrating Purim. It's a time of rejoicing. Historically, Haman has been defeated. Right? This is a joyous time. It's supposed to be Passover, by the way, according to the equinox. But the Jews are going to be drinking and celebrating and probably eating some leaven. Wouldn't you say some challah bread, honey?
Yeah.
They're probably going to be eating some challah and, drinking some uso or vodka or whatever. It's permitted in Judaism. It's almost a mandate. At Purim, we celebrate, you get drunk. But it's not Purim. It's Passover. And I think if they realized that, they would be shocked. But see, they don't observe the feast nor the Shabbat as according to the Bible anymore. That's a fact. I didn't make that up. And this is why they have to do something to reconcile the calendar by adding another month. And as I just showed you, the equinox is not going to change according to what the Jews do with adding another month. It is pretty much set there because the Father did it so. You can't change that. The Abib will be ripe when it's ripe. And that's based on sunlight and the days lengthening. It does not matter that it's a snowstorm ahead. It's a winter fruit. A winter grain. It grows in the winter. I've witnessed it firsthand in central Utah. A lot of barley and wheat. They also grow summer wheat grain in the summer at the other equinox. It's all tied to these cycles of growing and reaping, planting and reaping, folks. As hard as it is to quantify how you can live that way today, because we have been living on so long on a system of Babylon, there's no other way to put it. Even if you're on EBT, you're in Babylon. You're not planting, you're not reaping. You are basically in a cycle that's man-made, man-ordained, man-dictated. Man giveth and he taketh away. And I'm talking about the welfare, the EBT cards. There are millions and millions of people who are in bondage in Babylon. They don't know how to plant cabbage or some carrots or some tomatoes. Right? It's lost. It's all about the Benjamins. And so the system dictates that you get on that hamster wheel and you run that hamster wheel for, 6 days, 7 days. They don't even observe a Shabbat anymore. It's, balls to the wall 7 days a week. Getting it, humping it. Never seeing your kids. Life at home is chaos. Every time you make it home, when you pull in from the long haul across the country on the truck, right? Get home, just want to relax. Everything is chaos. Everything is out of rhythm. Don't even think about Shabbat. Got to get that dollar. Got to pay that mortgage. It's a rat race. Usury. The banks have got you so tight around the neck. You can't take a Shabbat. You got to get that dollar. And it's killing you. I didn't mean to preach. Guys, I really didn't. Really didn't. I'm not, for those of you hard workers, and I know a lot of hard workers. I'm not against hard work. I'm talking about the Babylonian system of usury, where you've borrowed to your gills and you're working yourself to death to catch up on the principle. Yahweh didn't intend it to be that way. And furthermore, every 50 years there's a jubilee. You're supposed to be set free from your debt. But not in Babylon. Not in Babylon. And so there you go. The God that's mentioned on the dollar bill is not Eloi. It's not Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. And I can prove that to you. It is not the Most High that we serve? It is a Babylonian deity of fortune. That's a fact. I did not make that up. HR what, darling?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Babylonian deity of fortune.
Yeah.
Give me the Strongs.
Oh, 1408, 1409.
1408, 1409.
I know what HR was.
Having a brain thing. Go look it up. You spell that Gimel Daled, and it's pronounced God. I find it really interesting that some Messianics and Jews write only those letters when they write the word God. Gimel and Daled. Incidentally, that's not his name, by the way. It's not his title either. So quit calling him Gimel Daled. It's so funny. They don't want to offend Yahweh, Yahuwah, Jehovah. They're all right. By not writing his name, and you write G_D. It doesn't make any sense to me. I really don't get it. We're supposed to proclaim his name. Don't hide it. Don't deny it. And certainly don't come against it. I saw someone come against it on Facebook very publicly against Rob Skiba, and that man dropped dead. Many of you know who I'm talking about. He was a famous end times writer, author. You know who I'm talking about. Some of you saw the whole thing go down. I didn't make that up, guys. That is an absolute fact. It is public knowledge on Facebook. I saw him say some things that, I know personally would be insulting to the Most High. I couldn't believe he said that, and with the audacity that he did. But he dropped dead. Sure did. That's a fact. Rob Skiba can tell you. I was shocked, but I understood the severity of it because it looked to me like blasphemy. I'm not going to throw him under the bus and say it was, but it was pretty severe. I would never have imagined anybody would say such thing about the name of the Most High and call people stupid for being sacred namers. Stuff like that. It was atrocious. The rest is history. I'm just saying, we are to esteem his name. I'm just a messenger, guys. I'm just a messenger. He taught me a lesson. I eat crow. I was the same thing. Don't tell. I'm sacred name. Don't even try. I know his name is God. I thought that. His name's God. What's the name of the Most High? His name's God. No, it's not. Nowhere near. Get a clue. It may save you one day. The scripture says. Read Psalm 91. There's a qualifier. For that fact, you read Revelation 3 is also a qualifier. The tree. So I didn't mean to get off preaching. This was supposed to be about the calendar and reconciling the year. So we're looking for the Abib, the ripeness, and it's certainly not going to be in April, guys. That's going to be way too long. Way too long for the harvest. I know some say, well, that's not even considered anymore. We're not growing wheat. We're not growing barley. Well, as Sanders is saying, there is someone growing barley. It's still the same cycle. Nothing has changed. But because we became a society, and this is across the board, of money and, 9-to-5 work week, the whole borrowing money, and then usury, which is unbiblical in the first place. All of that. So you could be taxed. I think the Dust Bowl that happened in America was because American farmers didn't observe Shemitah, letting the land rest, and they made a mess of it. And even today, a lot of farmers who are trying to beat nature by, growing GMO crops, and it's all about yield. What's the best yield? Because that's the bottom line is dollars. Wow. So around the time of, what was it, the September sign in the heavens, I mentioned to you guys that I was going to bring this point up because when we were observing Sukkot, one of our brothers that's got a really big YouTube channel, who happens to be off, he's way off into dispensation, made the comment that we were, and this was all of us that were observing Sukkot at that time, were off by at least a month because the stars weren't in the right place. And essentially, everything is thrown off by a month. And I said that if you do that, you're going to be out of the Abib. You're going to be looking at, the field's going to be already harvested by the time you are observing. So if we're going to be in this calendar of heaven, when the windows of heaven are opened, Scripture tells us, on these days, then we should try to be accurate in making the appointment. Would you agree? Yeah, and that's also a really, it's a super moon, this next one. That is a good point. That's because of the oscillation, the elliptical pattern of the moon is going to be closer to the earth at this time, which gives us a super moon. This will be on the 19th. We're looking at that, the 19th, just a few days from now. How's this? Now, if you are on the Jewish calendar, let me just show you this one point. Now, one point of the year, or feast, that is directly connected to a full moon is Passover. Now, if you're on a calendar that moves that day all around and doesn't observe the moon, then quite often you'll have those holidays not line up at all. They'll be off. If you don't consider the equinox, again, the grain does not care how cold it is. It's the light. When the days are longer, in other words, when the equinox hits and days are becoming an hour longer, progressively, the time change, the grain senses it. All of nature senses it. All the birds, all the animals, they know that spring is in the air. And what do they start doing? They start mating. It's time to procreate. It's time to, right? It has nothing to do with, the observance of the calendar for man based on a money system. And, we can just willy-nilly throw in another month and reconcile the whole thing. Not even consider the pattern given. It's off. So you're not on the right day. It's just the way it is. Everything going okay in the chat over there?
Sure, I did have a question I wrote down for you.
All right, what's the question?
Singing Bird. All my family in Yahusha that still don't get the calendar, are they in judgment? What if they feel they're doing it right? I'm a single woman. Who am I to go tell the elders of my assembly?
Yeah. No, for something like that, I wouldn't think they're in kind of rebellion or it's some kind of sin. I do believe that the Father wants to reconcile us to or get us in sync with His calendar, right? Because the Scripture says that on these days, His feast days, not your feast days, His feast days, the windows of heaven are opened up. Now, some people are going to, make an effort to try to observe when they're coming out of being asleep and they're waking up. It's a progressive walk, right? So it's okay wherever they are. If they don't receive that, just walk your walk as a representative. I wouldn't beat them over the head with the Scriptures. The Scripture says, "Be as wise as serpent, as gentle as doves," and I think that's probably the best way. Use wisdom and be gentle. Okay, and then I would think leading by example and being an example is the best way. If a person can observe your life and they see that there are blessings there, and they see that there is a natural rhythm and it seems that there's no chaos, they may want to know why this is. And this is when your door of explanation is open. So again, don't beat them over the head. Share with them, but don't beat them over the head with it. Be wise in your presentation. Amen. Any more questions? I want to apologize to you guys for not being, on YouTube as often. We've been doing a lot of work here in the past few weeks. Our brother Scott from the TheCodeSearchers group came out to help me with some tree work. And we are certainly so thankful for that. It was a tremendous burden. The county requires that these invasive trees be removed, and so it can be very costly. And so we had to do something. And I'm thankful for it. So we've been busy with doing that, and that is almost complete now. And so we're back at doing videos. We might try some new things here soon. I tried to do Patreon, which didn't really work out too well. First of all, I got locked out of the site over there. This is when someone tried to hack me. I still don't have Twitter back, by the way, either. So we're going to try some different things, maybe some daily vlogging. I don't know. We got to do something different. I appreciate you. You guys, I would appreciate the prayers. I do have to have a couple of surgeries very soon. So I would appreciate, keeping me in your prayers. At least one of them is kind of intimidating. It's probably why I've ignored it and put it off for so long, is because the procedure alone is not exciting, okay? So yeah, we'd appreciate that. And that'll be coming up pretty soon. When it goes down, you guys will know about it. Any more questions? Thank you, Fahid. And for those of you that are able, we would appreciate any donations. We could really use your help this month, guys. I'm not even kidding on that. For my core followers that have been there. We really need you guys. It's been a really taxing month, especially with having the cows here. I have to supplement everything that they need, and it's been expensive. So we love you guys, and we're here for you. We appreciate you and everything that you do for us. What's it? The 19th, Robert? That's the full moon.
You're talking about this month, right?
Yeah, this month. In a few days is the full moon.
But Passover is 20th of March.
Right. The Passover will be on the equinox this year, which is March 20th, around there. Okay, so we'll see the moon that give us an indication. And the Karaites, Nehemiah Gordon, I don't know if they're adding an Adar 2 this year, but I would bet that they're probably not. The Karaites are usually on point with the Abib. It's the Chabad Hasids that don't observe that. Thank you, Crystal. I appreciate that. It's been something I've put off a while. Many of you know I've been having some issues with bleeding. And so it's still ongoing, and I'm not putting it off any longer. And thank you guys. I will put the PDF that I was looking at earlier, guys. I'll make sure that there's one down in the description for you guys to see that on the Shemitah patterns. All right. All right, guys. I'm going to sign off here. We love you. We'll see you in the next broadcast. Shalom. And we'll see you in the next one.